listened to, so I don't know if I've ever listened to Alan Watts outside of YouTube, but I haven't. The only quote that I've heard from him about psychedelics is, what is it? Once you get the message, hang up the phone.
Yeah, I agree and disagree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that in the premise of stop asking questions about the universe and the origins of it. I disagree with the fact that you've learned all that there is to learn.
Yeah.
You know, like that concept to me is like, I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think he would support that either.
I don't think he meant that either when he said that.
Yeah.
But that being said, people use it for that, like as a phrase of like, well, if you got the message, hang up the phone. It's like, yeah, kind of. But also there are times where you just need maybe a break.
Yeah.
From psychedelics so that you live some life, and then when you revisit them,
you can integrate it.
Yeah, you have all this new experiences to reintegrate. And I really do believe that you should not be tripping every week or anything like that. You know, like I think once a month is probably as frequent as you should.
Really?
Like if you're going to do it that frequently, I would say that's about as frequent. But that to me would be better to do like end of month or beginning of month. You know, as the reset of like, how did that month do? You know, and you kind of like reassess, like, how did I do? Was I doing what I wanted to do? Am I moving in the direction I want to move in? And like, you can use that as a form of like reflection. That being said, if you're killing it and your momentum is strong, like, there's no reason to disrupt that because it will. It will disrupt momentum even if it's good momentum. Yeah. So I think it's just good for breaking cycles, loops, and maybe just gaining some perspective that maybe you lose a little bit once you really get lost in the sauce.
Totally. I think that did you read Michael Pollan's book?
I haven't read it, man, but I mean, I listened to the podcast that Joe Rogan had him on, and he talked all about the book. So I've definitely I've heard a lot about what he's talked about, and I know it's something that I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah,
but I have not read it.
He's great. So he was not a psychonaut at all going into it. He was just like a food person, critic. Reporter, I guess. So he basically heard about all of the clinical trials and the Johns Hopkins for like smoking cessation and people who are terminally ill with cancer, and like they would do heroic doses of psilocybin mushrooms or LSD or DMT, and their death anxiety is just gone. Yeah, like totally gone. And then the most like remarkable one was smoking cessation. It was something like 80% of people who were addicted to smoking after psilocybin.
Anything else is nowhere near.
It's fucking crazy. And when he asked them why, like, what about it? And he would usually get answers like, well, I realized that my breath is so precious. Like my body is like a gift.
Dude, he called it in one of the podcasts. I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast. He said that it is a graduate degree on the obvious or something like that.
Ah, that's great.
Yeah, it was like a graduate degree in the obvious. So like basically there are things like I said earlier with cliches that like they're cliche because they're so true and they've been said so many times that the meaning's almost been lost by how often it's been said. But psychedelics will add that magic part of what those sayings really mean and the true core of it, that it kind of like re-energizes it in a way that I think when you just hear it, you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it does. I mean, magic is it seems weird, but it's a good way to describe it. Psychedelics have this magical way of dissolving and collapsing your beliefs and assumptions you have about yourself and belief and assumptions you have about the world.
Yes.
Like it's crazy because it can show you that there's such a different side of this. It forces you to see things from a different perspective. So on my most recent mushroom trip that I did, it was I'm in no means a psychonaut. I'm kind of like a wannabe psychonaut, I guess. So I only took about 2 grams, but I mean, it was amazing. But a couple of the takeaways that I found was I have way, way, way more anxiety than I ever led anyone close to me to believe, even my fiance and like my family. Yeah. And at the same time, so it was something that I think I deep down knew about myself, but it kind of brought that out. And at the same time, I was able to foster a level of self-compassion for that I've never felt before. And it was so overwhelming to me that I just fucking wept. Yeah. For like 5 minutes. It was like the best kind of psychological purge. Just get everything out.
Just get it out, man. Yes. Yes. And it really is a catharsis.
And it's like, and psilocybin is so gentle with you about it too. So it's magical is probably the best.
Dude, magic
way to
mushrooms.
describe
There's a
it.
reason why they fucking call it that. And I really believe that mushrooms in particular, versus like acid, mushrooms is so like scalable.
Yeah.
And it adjusts to your skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a more experienced psychonaut, it will push you.
Yeah.
And it will always make it a challenge. It
Yeah.
will always make it something that you're not going to get an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that it means that it's going to be difficult either. It just means that it's going to make sure that you actually have to learn something. And it's because it's ultimately your mind. The psilocybin's activating a process, but your mind is the thing that's doing it. And the mind has its own best interest in mind. It doesn't always know what it's doing.
Yeah.
So sometimes it does the wrong things because of evolution. But it still has your right ideas in mind. It wants to help you.
Yeah.
And so your subconscious mind begins to speak with your conscious mind with mushrooms. And with mushrooms in particular, there's almost a guide built in based on the plant, or in this case, the fungi, that
It's psilocybe cubensis, I think.
yeah, it seems like that part has its own wisdom baked into it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's from DNA and from us consuming them for thousands of years or
I don't
something.
know,
like.
man.
I don't know what it is, but it's a symbiotic relationship where it seems that these things activate a part of your brain that is there but not accessible really without the trigger being the psilocybin.
Yeah. And I think I think that you can get those kinds of experiences through hours and hours and many of hours of meditation.
Totally.
So
you totally can.
one of the analogies that I love that I heard from Sam Harris actually is that for exploring the inner landscape of your mind, psychedelics is like strapping yourself to a rocket and just fucking going.
Yep.
And you may end up someplace that's like a little scary or whatever, but yeah, it's kind of like a cheat code. It's like
It is.
boom, you're enlightened for a little bit, get what you can out of it, all of that stuff. So
And then reintegrate it.
Yeah, reintegration. So psychedelics is kind of like strapping yourself to a rocket and going into your mind, whereas meditation is kind of like gently putting up a sail and just sailing into it and getting to the point where like if things start to get scary, you can like backtrack a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think that the only real danger of psychedelics is it might bring up some shit that you're not ready to deal with or you're not ready to look at.
Yes. And I mean, so you mentioned Terence McKenna before.
Yeah.
And it made me think of this one quote. And it was, psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government. I know. Not because a loving government is concerned that you may jump out of a third-story window. Psychedelics are illegal because they dissolve opinion structures and culturally lay down models of behavior and information processing. They open you up to the possibility that everything you know is wrong.
Yep. That is a spot on Terence McKenna impression.
Well, I mean,